Hello, and thank you for joining the Lancaster Patriot podcast. My name is Chris Hume. I am the managing editor at the Lancaster Patriot, a conservative print newspaper serving Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and beyond. And I'm joined today by Charlie Gerow, who is running for governor in the state of Pennsylvania. Charlie, thank you for joining us.
Chris, I'm delighted to be with you. It's a pleasure.
Well, Charlie, I want to talk about your campaign. We have just less than a week. The primary election is coming up on Tuesday, May 17th. And first, I want to get your reaction to the news that Jay Corman had stepped out of the race and endorsed Lou Barletta. Just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, Jake's been in the race, out of the race, in the race, out of the race. So who knows what's going to go on from here. I mean, to be very candid, this is not the first time he's dropped out of the race. So I think it will probably have the same impact that his previous dropping out did.
So let's talk a little bit about your campaign, why you're running. Just if you wanted to tell somebody who's never heard of you, who's figuring out who they're going to vote for, why should they elect you as the next Pennsylvania governor?
Well, first of all, let me spell my name, because for folks hearing it on your podcast, it's a little difficult to pronounce. It's Gerow, Gerow. I'm the candidate from Central Pennsylvania, the one with the 717 area code. And I'm running for governor, Chris, because I believe our state is in real trouble. I believe we're in a battle for the heart and soul of this nation. And I know that those battle lines come right through Pennsylvania this year, because we've got a real opportunity, and opportunity is the key word, an opportunity to reject the big government, big spending, mandate, edict, arbitrary, capricious actions of Tom Wolf and Josh Shapiro, and choose instead a future of individual liberty, personal freedom, individual responsibility, and of hope, economic growth, opportunities for all, and a prosperity for Pennsylvania that we haven't seen before. And that's why I'm running for governor.
Well, I have your campaign ad, one of your campaign ads in front of me here, and it mentions Charlie Gerow's Pennsylvania 7. And it has 7 things here. And I want to kind of go through some of these and just ask some questions and press you a little bit on these. And let's start with pro-school choice. Just kind of explain your position there. Maybe then I can drill down a little bit.
Happy to, Chris. You know, a lot of the candidates are going to tell you they're for school choice because it's so important that we get kids that are in failing schools and give them the opportunity to do what wealthier kids do, which is choose a school for themselves. And I've been for school choice from the beginning. I can show you a long history of working for the education improvement tax credit, for example. So when folks tell you that they're for school choice, it's important to ask, what have you done to promote it? And I've got a long record of promoting school choice.
I want to ask you very specifically about education. And many parents have decided, realized that the government school system is not the solution for their children. And we look around and we see a lot of crazy things happening. Many parents are concerned. They're going to these school board meetings. They're seeing, the critical race theory, abortion, transgenderism. They're seeing these things in the government school system. And many of them, even before that, had decided to pull their kids out. So, but with that being the case, and with everything that is in the government school system being taught, the state of Pennsylvania still requires parents to adhere to the government's regulations about educating their children, even if they're homeschooling. So they have to let the state know, they have to follow the state mandated subjects, they have to do these tests. Now, the Amish won a big Supreme Court case back in the 1970s, where they were exempt from compulsory school attendance laws because it was ruled unconstitutional, as it violated the First Amendment right to free exercise of religion. So my question is, will you support and sign a bill that came to your desk that would apply the same logic to other parents who may not be Amish, who will say, I do not want the government to regulate how I homeschool. I want complete freedom to educate my children without the government sticking their nose in my business?
The case that you're referring to is Wisconsin versus Yoder.
Yes.
Which was argued by William Bentley Ball from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a longtime friend of mine who passed away a number of years ago, and was, as you say, a landmark case. But you have to read that case very, very carefully, Chris, because a lot of the particulars in there that allowed the Amish to win that case don't apply to other students. Having said that, I want to be very, very clear. I have been a long time supporter of homeschooling. If you're familiar with Patrick Henry College, which is really the premier secondary education institution for homeschoolers and the homeschool movement, I helped to write the curriculum for Patrick Henry College. Mike Ferris, who is the head of the homeschool legal defense operation, is a longtime friend of mine and has been working with me, and I've been working with him for homeschoolers for many years. But I would want to see the particulars of any legislation that came to my desk that said that parents could simply do what they want with the schooling of their children without any standards whatsoever, because not all homeschoolers are conservative, as you know. So I think we've got to have some basic level of understanding of what our educational system is going to require of our students. Having said that, you know, I'm also somebody that believes very, very strongly that parents need to be in charge, that ultimately parents have the responsibility for their kids.
Like, I just want to press you on that a little bit before we move on, because there are states in the nation right now who have homeschooling laws that are far more lenient. I mean, Pennsylvania has one of the strictest homeschooling regulations. And I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, why does the government, you know, especially given the fact that of what is promoted in government schools, why do we trust the government to tell parents how to educate their children? Should not
Well,
that be truly left to the parents?
well, then you don't have any educational requirements whatsoever. And what I'm saying is, to me, you've got to have some baseline, but you have to have the basic premise that parents are in charge, that they are the ones that are primarily responsible. But to just say, for example, your kids don't need to go to school at all, that I think is something that would be rejected by the overwhelming majority of Pennsylvanians. So I want to be very clear. I'd want to look at the specific legislation. I agree with you that Pennsylvania has more stringent rules regarding homeschooling than some other states. Give room for flexibility and for creating additional opportunities for parents to be completely in charge. But to simply say that there are no rules, I think is probably not something that's ever going to pass the General Assembly of Pennsylvania, but B, would be something I'd want to look at very carefully.
Well, in some state, I mean, Delaware, for example, you just have to notify the state. I mean, I wouldn't even agree with that, but there are no further regulations as far as subjects. So I think it may be something that people would support, because there are similar laws throughout the nation. Obviously, there's some different specifics, but let's move on to pro-election
By the
integrity.
way,
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
bet you there's no other candidate for governor that could have told you that it was Wisconsin versus Yoder that you were talking about.
You may be right, and I do appreciate that. I'm really hoping that we can move away from the idea of the government dictating these things. I just don't think they have the place, nor do they have the capability. When you look at the landscape of the government school system, why I would think that they can tell me what to teach my kids, and that's my concern with that, Charlie.
Gotcha.
Now, what about pro-election integrity? Kind of just give us a summary of that and where you stand and how you would help with that issue.
Well, election integrity is really at the heart of our system, because if we can't trust the vote, there are no winners. And what I've been saying throughout this campaign, Chris, is that any fraudulent vote, even one, cancels out the vote of one cast by a law-abiding citizen. And that simply can't be tolerated. So we've got to create a system whereby we know that every vote that's cast is properly cast, and every vote that's properly cast is properly counted. And so we've got a lot of work to do. One of the advantages that a governor has in Pennsylvania is that he or she gets to appoint the Secretary of State. In most states in the nation, the Secretary of State, who administers statewide elections, is elected by the people. But here, he or she is appointed by the governor. And I have told every person I've talked to about election integrity that I will appoint a Secretary of State who is two things. One, experienced in running elections so that he or she knows what they're doing. And two, is fundamentally and unalterably committed to the rule of law, so that you're not changing the rules in the middle of the game, moving the goalposts, saying to one set of counties, you can have this set of rules, and to a county right next door, you can have a different set of rules. And so that's really, really imperative. But the other thing, Chris, is we have to repeal Act 77. It was on its face unconstitutional. And a couple of the candidates, one of whom has now dropped out again, but a couple of the candidates that voted for Act 77 want to tell people, oh, well, it was really okay, but the courts and Tom Wolfe played that's simply not true. It was on its face unconstitutional. It never should have been passed. The Commonwealth Court told us that it was unconstitutional, and so there ought to be some accountability for those who voted for it. But I would be one that would make sure that it was quickly repealed if I were governor.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about pro-police and what you think the current status of police, support for police in Pennsylvania, and where you think there's a need to address that.
Well, on the broadest level, Chris, there's a need to have a governor who respects the men and women in blue, who honors them, who defends them, who stands up for them, who wants to see increased funding for police rather than defunding, because public safety is really at the pinnacle of the responsibilities of a governor. Protecting our rights and protecting our personal safety is what being a governor is all about. And so I've got a plan, for example, to put 1,000 more police officers on the streets of Philadelphia, because they're undermanned, underpersoned, if you will. They're understaffed with their police department now. And so you've got rampant crime running through the largest city in our state. And so I am very, very pro-police and want to make sure that the safety of every Pennsylvanian is protected to the greatest degree possible.
I want to ask you now just about your underlying worldview, your values. Every person, and certainly including every political candidate, has a worldview. It dictates what they view as right and wrong, how they make decisions, what their ultimate values are. Can you share with voters what's your underlying worldview, and how do you determine right from wrong as you look at these things and as you consider, potentially being a governor and having to determine, sign bills into law and that could punish people? What's your underlying worldview that allows you to interpret the world?
Well, my underlying view, Chris, is my Christian faith. And if you believe in the God of the Bible and in the precepts that he's very, very clearly laid down for us to live by, you have a well-formed and fashioned worldview. And I try to, every day, adhere to the basic tenets of my faith and the basic rules of the God of the universe. And I think if you do that, you're on the right path. As I was once told by my dad, when you walk the corridors of power, you're playing against the devil's first team. So I think it's important for any leader to recognize that and to wake up every morning and to pray for humility and to pray for guidance. And that's what I will do as governor. It's what I try to do every single day right now.
That's definitely something that, many of the people that founded this nation had a belief that if you do not have that faith in God, then you cannot govern well. I want to read something to you from the original Pennsylvania Constitution, 1775, I believe. And it says, "In each member," talking of civil magistrates, "before he takes his seat, shall make and subscribe the following declaration: I believe in one God, the creator and governor of the universe, the rewarder of the good and the punisher of the wicked. And I do acknowledge the scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration." And then it says, "And no further or other religious test shall ever hereafter be required of any civil officer or magistrate in this state." So that was in the original Pennsylvania Constitution. And we talk about religious freedom in Pennsylvania, but the state of PA was founded as an explicitly Christian state, which required civil magistrates to subscribe to the Christian religion. So the freedom of religion was within the realm of Christendom as far as it went for civil magistrates. So my question for you, Charlie, is would you favor returning that clause back into the state constitution?
Well, we haven't had a constitutional convention in Pennsylvania since 1968. And I think it would be very, very difficult to get that done. That's not up to the governor. The governor does not have anything to do with constitutional amendments, as you know. If there are constitutional amendments, they either have to go through a constitutional convention or through the constitutional amendment process, which, unlike so many other things, doesn't touch the governor's desk. It is passed by 2 consecutive sessions of the General Assembly and then put up for a referendum by the voters of Pennsylvania. So that's not something that the governor would ever have any authority over.
Well, as a voter in Pennsylvania, then, would you support that?
Well, if it comes up for a vote, we'll be happy to talk about it. I'll be very candid with you, Chris. I don't think that's likely to happen, and I don't want to mislead your listeners into believing that that's something that's likely to happen.
Yeah, I'm certainly not asking if it's likely, just your position on it. I want to move on.
I just go ahead.
Yep. Okay. I want to talk about pro-life. Now, the state of Louisiana, HB 813 in the state of Louisiana, the Abolition of Abortion in Louisiana Act of 2022, sponsored by a Republican representative down there. It would acknowledge the sanctity of innocent human life created in the image of God, which should be equally protected from fertilization to natural death, to ensure the right to life and equal protection of the laws for all preborn babies, and it applies statutes about homicide to children in the womb. So this bill that is being considered right now will make no exception for cases of rape, incest, or the health of the mother. So would you fight for, support, and then sign a bill if it came to your desk that would do the same thing in Pennsylvania, outlaw all abortion, no exceptions, and treat abortion as homicide under the law?
If that bill came to my desk as governor, I would sign it without hesitation.
Okay. And what do you, if that being the case, what challenges do you see to a bill like that coming to your desk?
Well, I think the challenges would be in the General Assembly, because you've got to build consensus to get a majority vote in both the House and the Senate before it could come to the governor's desk. And that's what I would work for, is to get a consensus for the most expansive protections for unborn babies as we could possibly get. I can't tell you what that would finally be, but I would hope that it would be what you just talked about, Chris. I would hope that that could get to my desk. And if it did, I would sign it without hesitation.
Okay. And yeah, that's encouraging to hear, because a lot of people wouldn't. And I wanted to be clear that one of the things that even Republican pro-lifers, quote unquote, have attempted to, stymie these types of bills. And when these bills are presented, it's often the pro-lifers who say, this is not a good bill. It's not the right time for this. We don't want to outlaw all abortion. We want to regulate it. We want to maybe do a heartbeat bill, which would allow for the murder of some babies and not others. So for many pro-life Republicans, they would be very much opposed to this bill because it does not make exceptions for rape or incest or those things. So I'm encouraged to hear you say you would support that, because that's not something that we're hearing a lot. So you would be fine with those no exception clauses, correct?
If it came to my desk, again, I don't know how I can make it more clear, Chris. I would sign it. Look, I have been unequivocally pro-life all my life for three reasons. One, I'm a Christian, and I believe that we're made in the image of God, and as a result, we are entitled to the sanctity and protection of our lives. Two, dirty little secret, I'm a lawyer by profession. As you know, Chris, I'm a small businessman. I don't practice law, but I still hold a license to practice law, and Roe versus Wade was simply bad law. It was from the beginning. It still is today. And third, something we didn't get a chance to talk about in our podcast today, I'm an adopted child. So I recognize fully that if my mother hadn't done the right thing, my birth mother, I wouldn't be here today. So, it's an emotional issue for me as well as an intellectual issue.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that. Definitely an important topic, and I appreciate you answering that. Let's talk a little bit about taxation. So one of the things kind of going around the county here, at least in Lancaster County, is the idea of the property tax. Now, I know, just in general, just kind of give us an idea of what you think the issues are with taxation. And as governor, what, if anything, could you do to address the ever-increasing taxation on the people?
Well, I'm very proud of the fact, Chris, again, being able to show people what I've done. I'm one of only two Pennsylvanians to get a Lifetime Achievement Award from Citizens Against Higher Taxes, the largest taxpayer organization in Pennsylvania. And that's because of my work through the years to oppose higher taxes constantly being imposed upon the citizens of Pennsylvania, because ultimately, if you tax something, you get less of it. And what do we tax? We tax hard work, we tax productivity, we tax savings, we tax investment, we tax job creation, we tax all the things that we say we want. And so I'm a great believer that if you allow individuals and families to keep more of what they earn and decide for themselves how those tax dollars are spent, we're all better off for it. And I've opposed the personal property tax for years, worked for ways to get around it. But I think, Chris, we've got to be honest with people and not pretend there's magic dust that can float down from the sky and simply eliminate the school property tax. If we're going to eliminate the school property tax, we've got to come up with other ways of creating that funding. And so it is ultimately a burden shift. And I've talked very specifically about my plans. You don't hear any of the other gubernatorial candidates talking about any specific plan to get rid of the school property tax. I have. And so I'm willing to talk about that now if you want to, but I just want folks to know that I'm fundamentally prepared to do what needs to be done. I know how state government runs. I know what needs to be done. I'm prepared to do it, not just simply talk about it.
Maybe you could try, I'm not sure how brief you could be, your plan to replace property taxes.
Well, real simply, we would eliminate under the plan that I would propose. And again, you've got to work with the legislature to get something that can be passed. But the starting point for me would be to eliminate the school property tax and to replace it by broadening or expanding the base of the sales tax and increasing the sales tax perhaps 1%. I believe that if we expanded the base properly and simply raised it from 6 to 7%, we could get the money necessary to replace the school property tax. And I think that would be fair for all Pennsylvanians. It's still going to be a burden. And I think that a lot of folks need to recognize that it's school districts that are causing those taxes to constantly go up. Many of whom, by the way, Chris, have gigantic reserves, meaning the taxpayers' money held in accounts, and yet they're asking the taxpayers for more. And I have a real problem with that.
What about the gasoline tax? What's your position on that?
Well, the gas tax is not the problem. I mean, the fact that we are paying inordinate amounts for gas at the pump, and I hate it. I hate it as much as anybody. It costs me a small fortune to juice up my car, and I need a mortgage to go to the gas pump. But the gas tax has remained the same for the past 6 years. Meanwhile, gas prices have gone through the roof. Why? It's not because of the gas tax. It's because of Joe Biden's economy. It's because of runaway inflation caused by profligate spending in Washington, D.C. That's the real problem. The difficulty with gimmickry, and I will use that word advisedly, gimmickry with the gas tax is that if you eliminate pieces of the gas tax, especially as one candidate says permanently, you're taking the money away from the roads and bridges.
Looks like we lost Charlie for a second there. Charlie, are you still with us? Just having a little technical difficulty here. Just stand by one moment. We're going to get Charlie back on the line here and continue this conversation.
Hey, Chris, I think either you lost me or I lost you.
Yep, well, we're still going, recording here, so go ahead and wrap that up.
Okay.
No worries.
That was quick. I don't know where I was in my inveighing about the gas tax, but I was saying we've got to fix our potholes and repair our bridges because public safety is at issue, and so is our economy. If you can't get your goods to market safely and reliably, it hurts our economy. But most important, public safety is at risk. It's not just the fact that you might drop into one of these potholes and break an axle, but with the bridges, you could lose your life, and we simply cannot have that. So for the folks that are saying we're going to eliminate the gas tax, they've got to tell us how they're going to pay to fix our roads and bridges.
Okay. We're running near the end here, but I want to see if you can address this, the issue of transgenderism being taught in the government schools, and the issue of surgery being done on minors and hormone therapy. How will you address that as governor?
Well, I mean, the very fact, Chris, that you and I have that conversation is appalling. You know what I mean? Just a year ago, nobody would ask that question because it would have been thought of to be just crazy. And common sense tells us that this is a very, very, very dangerous place we're going to. Let me just say this. I was a basketball player once upon a time, and when I got done playing, I coached. I coached mostly men's teams, but at the very end of my coaching career, I coached a women's team. These were AAU basketball players, young, or really, special athletes. They were all going to get Division I or Division II scholarships. They only played basketball with 5 people. So if you put 2 men on the court, you're taking 2 women off the court and putting them on the bench. And when you do that, you're taking 2 women off the end of the bench and not even allowing them to participate. And there's just something so gut-wrenchingly wrong about that I can't even find the words to use to express how awful that is. So, we just got to get back to common sense. We've allowed things to go to really crazy extremes. And so the mere fact that we're having this discussion to me is very troubling. That no, transgender sports would be put to an end in Pennsylvania. We'd get back to doing things the right way. We wouldn't be talking about minors being allowed to have transgender surgery without their parents' consent, etc.
Okay. We have just a few minutes left. I want to just give you an opportunity. If there's anything that we didn't cover that you feel would be important for voters to know as they go to the polls on Tuesday.
Well, I really appreciate that, Chris. Real quickly, I'm a candidate from central Pennsylvania, really the one closest to Lancaster County by a long shot, a 717 area code, as I say, and my phone number is 717-877-8194. If anybody wants to call me, they can do it directly and ask anything they'd like that you and I didn't get a chance to cover, Chris. 717-877-8194. You spell my last name Gerow, Gerow, because I know some folks have a little difficulty pronouncing that from time to time. I do myself, Chris. But I'm the candidate who's running for office because I believe in individual liberty and personal freedom. I began my career working with Ronald Reagan, worked with President Reagan for 25 years on and off, including the arrangements for his funeral. Today, I am the vice chairman of CPAC, which I'm sure your listeners are familiar with, the largest conservative organization in the world, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm running as hard as I humanly can. I will ask for the support of every one of your listeners. I ask them to talk to their friends and neighbors over the course of the next 5 days, because we have an opportunity, as I said, to reject what Tom Wolf and Josh Shapiro have done to Pennsylvania and choose a very different path of individual liberty and personal freedom. So I am an outsider who knows what's going on inside. I'm a small businessman who knows how to run government like a business. But most important, I'm a patriot that will stand up and fight for individual liberty, personal freedom, and all of the conservative values that you and I hold so dear. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be on with you today.
Well, I thank you for joining me, Charlie. Do you have a website where people can go to get more information?
We do. It's Charlie for FOR Governor, charlieforgovernor.com, charlieforgovernor.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Again, this is Charlie Gerow running for governor of Pennsylvania. He will appear on your ballot if you are a registered Republican voter this Tuesday, May 17th, during the primary. So, Charlie, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with me, answer these questions. I do appreciate it, and I wish you all the best.
Really great to be on with you. And just one final thing, it's Lucky 7, number 7 on the ballot on Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Lancaster Patriot Podcast is a production of the Lancaster Patriot, a conservative print newspaper serving Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and beyond. Our goal is to provide readers with journalism that is ethical, honest, and investigative. We deliver our physical newspaper right to your doorstep or mailbox 52 times a year. For more information and to subscribe, visit www.thelancasterpatriot.com.